We are Devika, and I'm very delighted to be here in the Coconut Theatre's Chai-Wai Rangmanch platform to talk about a very passionate theatre from Tamil Nadu. It's called the Total Theatre of the Tamils. I'm very, very happy to be talking to you about it. I am a person who kind of belongs everywhere. You know, my ancestors are from Maharashtra. I grew up in Karnataka, so my mother tongue is Marathi. My father tongue is Kannada. Now I live in Chennai, which was Madras, and I speak Tamil. So I'm a Tamilian, I'm a Kannadiga, I'm a Maharashtrian, and of course, being an Indian, I also know Hindi a little bit, but I like to speak in English. That is the language that I have learned to talk anything that I'm passionate about. So, Koothu. Koothu is the total theatre of the Tamils. Why total theatre? What is total theatre? Total theatre means a theatre that has simultaneously many layered performances. A theatre, a storytelling tradition, and a tradition. Namaskar, I'm starting again because of certain small little issue that I had. So here I am talking about Koothu. We just heard a little bit of the Koothu music. It is the music that welcomes the village to the performance. People begin to play the talam. There will be a medam that will be singing, and the music reaches the farthest corner of the village, and people begin to come towards the performance. The Mahabharata story is being performed. It's not just that story, it is a collective memory of the people that is being worked on, and it's a story that it's a story where Mahabharata is found alive in South India. You know, Tamil Nadu has 3 different cultural identities. The northern part with Kanchipuram as its center is called Tondai Mandalam. The southern part with Tanjavur and Madurai area, that is called Chola Nadu. Then the Coimbatore area, the Erode Coimbatore area that borders Kerala is Kongu Nadu. So the performing arts that are practiced in 3 different areas of Tamil Nadu have their own cultural identities. Now, Koothu is for the agrarian community in the northern part of Tamil Nadu, with Kanchipuram as the head. So when you go to Kanchipuram, everybody makes a beeline for Kailasanatha temple, which is a 7th century marvel of a structural temple, one of the first structural temples that were built in this part of the world. There you will see a beautiful sculpture in the wall of Kirata Junior, Arjuna and Kirata, Shiva and Arjuna fighting over the boar. Now, many scholars have constantly told us that this is because of Bharavi's Kirata Arjuniyam and things like that, you know. But obviously, that must have been from the inspiration of the folk tradition of the agrarian community that was performing Mahabharata in those villages. Because the costume that you see in that sculpture and the costume that you see people wearing even today, the headgear, which is called shikareki, and the kiridam or the crown, are all inspirations from the Koothu tradition. This is shikareki, which is a collapsible kind of a crown where artist ties on his hair, and then he expands it, and this is a beautiful thing for a prince. So an Arjuna or somebody from the royal family, but who is not a king, wears this. Whereas the king has the kattai vesham, the big crown, the kattai vesham, which is why a big decision was taken some time ago by many of the artists in the Kanchipuram area, to call the form Kattai Koothu, because there was this idea that perhaps the city people look at Theru Koothu as something very demeaning, because it is not street theatre. Though it is Theru, which means street, Koothu, which is a generic form for any performance, is not just Theru Koothu. It is a very elaborate, many-layered agrarian practice. It's a kind of a festival that looks at ritual, spectacle, storytelling, and performance. With high-level dialogue speaking, the actor himself singing the songs, dancing, giving the dialogues, giving the lead to the musicians to follow, and performing the rituals during the day. So let's look at a Bharata Festival in the Kanchipuram area. That area was earlier called North Arcad area, and this North Arcad area, the agrarian community had the festival of Bharadam as a harvest festival almost, because when they found that they had a little good harvest, or if they needed to pray for a good harvest, the village decides to hoist a flag. Every one of these villages would have a Draupadi Amman temple. A Draupadi Amman temple where Draupadi is worshipped, and it is for her. Shashikant Anantachari has written a beautiful article about and made a film called Kelai Draupadi. Draupadi, listen. So the performance is for Draupadi to know her own story and listen to it herself. So the icon in the temple of Draupadi is told the story in the beginning. So in the morning, Harikatha man who sings the story and describes the story with a lot of contemporary ideas thrown in. The whole village listens to this story. It is a collective memory because it's season after season after season after season they have listened to the same story. But there is constant fluidity in the contemporariness of the Mahabharata story. So the way the comments are alluded to the current happenings in the world. So it is a way of keeping your collective memory alive, your collective ritual alive, at the same time being in today's time. So the period of the play and the period of the story and the period current contemporary time get merged in the performance. So morning storytelling happens, and during the day, every day there is a ritual that is performed connected with the Mahabharata. For example, there is a huge tree that will be donated by one of the rich farm owners. This tree will be cut. It perhaps is 40 foot high, and this tree is cut and it is taken to the village square where the Draupadi Amman temple is, where the Koothu will happen, and it's cleaned, and carpenters put pegs all around it. Now, when the episode Arjuna Tapas happens, when Arjuna is in the story, in the episode, the whole night, the performance of Arjuna as a mendicant who is going up to the Himalayas to meet Shiva in Kailasa and take the Pashupatastra is performed with all its layered nuances. it's performed. But when the dawn is breaking, the actor Arjuna is finally, in a devotional fervor of almost meeting Shiva. So he lights a big a lamp in his plate that is given to him, and Somashekara he sings and begins to climb on the peg of each of these as he is singing and speaking his dialogues. He goes and sits on a tiny platform on top of this 40-foot high tree peg, and sits there, and he's still singing the songs. He has carried with him a bag full of lime and flowers and tulsi and other things. Women who see Arjuna as the symbol of fertility pray for a child, and they come and stand around the tree, the wooden pole, and they sing, and when he throws those lime and flowers, they catch it in their saris. Either they are saying thank you for having a child or praying for a child. They are all around as a ritual looking at this. When this is happening, there are many women who go into a trance, and all those things are happening. But an actor as Kirata Shiva and his huntress wife Parvati, they come and mingle with the audience, and they start this major fight with Arjuna, who is on top of the pole, about the boar that they have just hit. And huge dialogues happen between the two. It can be very, very high level philosophy, at the same time profane ideas that are exchanged between the two. Then finally Shiva says, after all, you are our son, come down and we'll give you the Pashupatastra. This Arjuna Tavas is a very, very important ritual, and while doing these rituals, different caste identities are celebrated by each ritual being given to a certain caste people. So they organize the different rituals. There is another day when the Virata Parva, the Madapidi Sunday, that is the cattle are brought out, and they celebrate this in the village. And there is a bullock cart that is for Bakasura Vadam, which is driven through the village, and the people in the village put food into the bullock cart. So these are different ways of the village becoming a part of the spectacle. There is no other here. The spectator and the spectacle are all the same, one and the same. So where does performance stop? Where does ritual begin? Where does spectacle begin? Where is the spectator and where is the actor? It's all blurred. But in the night, throughout the night, from 10 p.m. until the dawn, the one episode or the other of the Mahabharata, starting from Vilvalaipu, where Arjuna wins Draupadi, happens. So how do these things become a part of the village prop? So how this huge contraption of the bow and arrow and the fish going round, all these are created by the villagers. And while these performances are going on, actors are performing various roles of the Mahabharata. Incredible singing, incredible acting, incredible dancing, incredible dialogue with a lot of question and answers, and with a lot of contemporary commentary. All this happens. While all this is happening, in a corner, just outside the Draupadi Amman temple, just in front of the performance space, a huge Duryodhana statue is being built by the villagers. Villagers bring some 40 cartloads of mud, or there is already a statue there on which all vegetation has grown and people are playing, children are playing. That will be cleaned up and painted, and that becomes the Duryodhana. Let me show you a picture of, this is Shashikant Anantachari's picture in an article that he wrote for a Sangeet Natak Academy folk journal that I edited. This is the huge Duryodhana that is built in a village, and it's some 40 foot long. It's very huge. Now this statue is getting ready, being got ready by the villagers. The last day when the Mahabharata is to end with Bhima and Duryodhana being there as the final people. When Bhima is enticing Duryodhana to come out of the pond where he is hiding, they both agree, and Bhima even tells him, see, there is a village people are celebrating your figure there. They are building Duryodhana to trample upon. All that the Bhima tells Duryodhana in the play. Krishna says, let's go to the people, let's take it to the people. So during the day, there is all the people come and gather in front of that statue that has been created, and Draupadi Amman is brought out from the icon of Draupadi is brought out from the temple. The actor Bhima and the actor Duryodhana, they go and fight in almost every street of the village, which is why perhaps the name Theru was given to it. And so they fight all over and then finally come to the Duryodhana that is lying. And there are some 5 people who take, the side story here is that Gandhari had created for Duryodhana, knowing his vulnerability, magic mantra she had given him, and she had appointed 5 people to incant these magic mantras so that Duryodhana is invincible. And they are standing all around. They have, the Shalya and Bhishma and a few others from the Kaurava side. The men from the village have taken austerities for some days, and they have kept themselves in a ritual purification, and they all form these guys sitting around. Then Krishna throws a magic mantra around them. At that time, people cover these guys with a cloth made of turmeric, dipped in turmeric water, and they are covered. So the magic incantation is not there anymore. And Duryodhana asks Bhima, where is your life? Where is it concentrated? Bhima says, it's in my forehead. Whereas Krishna shows him the thigh for Duryodhana. And the actor Bhima goes and strikes on the right thigh of the statue of Duryodhana. He goes and strikes the statue, and there is a mud water concealed in a hole in the right thigh of the statue, and people take that as prasad. And there is a lamentation. Duryodhana's wife comes and she laments. She says, you were a good king, you know what is good, why did this happen, how could you have taken such bad decisions, etc. You could have at least given them a little bit. So the whole village joins in this mourning, but Duryodhana's wife, because every folk theatre all over Southeast Asia ridicules the perceived villain of the story. So Duryodhana is ridiculed, his wife is ridiculed every time, and all this ridiculing happens with the Kattiyakaran. Kattiyakaran is the Sutradhar. Kattiya means binding. So he is the Sutradhar, he is the one who binds the play, and he comes in and he has no rule for his costuming. He can wear anything. He comes in and he introduces the play, and the first word he tells, now it is a Tamil word, silence, he says to the people, and he says, now we are going to perform this, and please forgive us like you would forgive your children for any mistakes we make in music, in dance, in dialogue or whatever. If we make mistakes, please forgive us like you would forgive your children. And we are going to show you this episode from the Mahabharata today. So he brings it to the cue, he brings it to the time of the play, where the play is going to start that night. Now every character that comes in and then a circling is taken. When the circling is taken, the place has been sanctified and it becomes the palace, it becomes whatever they intend it to be. Because there is no there is always a suspension of disbelief here, because everything is illusionary, at the same time it is happening. So the Katyakaran asks questions to the character, and the character himself or herself says, who are you? And then of course, the Katyakaran makes a lot of fun about the name. He puns on the name. He teases. If it is Draupadi, it is with a lot of respect. If it is Duryodhana, with a lot of ridiculing. If it is Dushasana, even more. Provoke him with all kinds of punning on the words, and then bringing in profane ideas of humor into into the dialogue, etc., etc. And then the character asks him, do you know who I am? He says, only if you tell we will know. And then if Duryodhana says, I am the first of the 100 brothers, then he goes off into long, what is this? Didn't your parents know anything about family planning? Don't they know? How could they have 100 children, etc., etc.? All this goes on. So questions are answered by the character to introduce the character. And then, the character says, I have come here to meet this person, etc. And then the story continues from there. So the Katyakaran is constantly there. When there is too much pathos, he breaks it and brings in a lot of humor. And when slapstick is happening and it's too much on to the other extreme, he comes in and brings in something very serious happening. I once was watching a Ramayana Koothu, and when Rama and Lakshmana came, and this was an Indrajit, story of Indrajit, son of Ravana. And when the Rama and Lakshmana came and stood behind, and the singing was going on, and they were singing in praise of Rama and Lakshmana, and the Katyakaran just went and did a big namaskaram to the audience. And the singer said, what is this? How can you do this? Rama and Lakshmana, the God is standing behind you. He just looked at it and said, you see the God? He's my friend. He's only acting. Where is the God? Where is the story happening? He said, in the minds of all these people who are sitting in front of us. That is why I'm doing namaskaram there. Ramayana's story is happening in their mind. These guys are only acting. This is what he said. These kind of incredible, profound ideas come as a matter of fun and as a matter of humor also. At the same time, there was once in the same Indrajit story, Ravana was, Munaswami was performing Ravana with such pathos, because he was hearing the defeat of his army one after the other. He was listening, he was hearing the reports of losing his very, very best comrades in Lanka. And he is feeling so sad, and suddenly the report was being given to him, how this arrows are going back and forth, etc. And Katyakaran came running, and he said, one big arrow came like that, one missile came, and another missile went and hit it, and it fell down and it was destroyed, etc., etc. This was in the 90s for the first time. So the Gulf War was being shown live on CNN, and Ravana, speaking such high dialogue, just looks at Katikaran and says, all this did you see, or was it on CNN? We were all astounded because it was in the middle of nowhere and in the middle of the night, and Ravana is telling this, did you see it on CNN? You are describing the war like this. So, contemporaneous constantly keeps coming in. So Katikaran is a very, very important role here. So he is the Vidushaka, he is the binder of the story, he can be very wise, he can be very profane, and he keeps traveling between the period of the story and contemporary times, constantly linking the two. So we go to another ritual. The Pandavas, when they started the Kurukshetra war, they needed a sacrifice to win the war. And it was decided that a young man who had in his body all the 32 Lakshanas perfectly would have to be sacrificed before they begin the war. And this falls on Arjuna's son, Aravan. Now, Aravan agrees to it. He says, yes, I will give my life, I don't mind, but he says, I have a desire to see Kurukshetra, war, for one. So you must make sure that even though I am dead, I will see the war, I will witness it. And the second condition was that he said, I have not seen conjugal bliss, so you have to get me married tonight, and tomorrow morning you can kill me. Aravan tells. Now, who will give a girl to a man who they know will be killed the next morning? Why will a girl agree? So Krishna, our friend who has the solution for every problem, says, I'll become Mohini and I will marry you. So that night, Aravan is married to Krishna, who has now become Mohini. They spend the night together, and in the morning Aravan's head is cut, but Krishna has promised him that his head will remain alive to be able to see the Kurukshetra war. So the village, when they decide to have a Mahabharata festival in the village, they go to a potter. A potter makes a huge head of Aravan and paints it with the same kind of crown and all that, huge one. And ritually they bring the Aravan to the place where they are making the Duryodhana statue. So Aravan's head is witnessing the whole story that is happening in the village. It's an amazing way of stopping, disbelief. And so there are these kinds of various ways of layered ways of the performance. And a lot of the villagers believe that Mahabharata is anti-war. A lot of people believe that Mahabharata is advocating war because the maximum number of words in Mahabharata has been devoted to the description of Kurukshetra war, but the villagers in North Arcot districts believe it is anti-war, and it is the Koothu is performed to appease the anger of Draupadi, who had been humiliated, this injustice of war. And they say, the whole of Mahabharata says ahimsa paramo dharmaha, and so they say anti-war, war between brothers, so Draupadi is telling us that this should not happen. This is the belief they have. But since the performers are all male and this is their livelihood, they are traveling from village to village performing, and they do not belong to the same caste. Many of them are Vanniyars. Vanniyars believe that Arjuna had requested them to look after the Pashupatastra that he had hidden in the tree before starting the Kurukshetra war in the Virata Parva. So they were responsible for looking after the weapons of Arjuna, the Pandavas. So they feel that they are a part of the Pandavas, and so many of the Koothu artists are 1 year, but it is not restricted to 1 year. There are many young people who run away from home to become part of a Koothu group. When they are children, they become part of the assistance brigade, bringing tea and helping in the costuming, etc. Everybody sings the chorus. When an actor sings, says a dialogue and sings that dialogue, it is in a chorus form. So it is taken up by not only the musicians who are sitting there, the melam that is sitting behind the actors, but also all those who are at the back making up for another role, or the boys that are bringing tea, and all of them, everybody sings. So everyone knows every role, but some people are better known for certain roles that they perform. We know that Sambandam has, Purusai Kannappa Tambiran was very well known for his Karnamoksham, and also for his Duryodhana's brother. And he was very well known for these roles, in the Draupadi Vastrabharanam time. And so various devices, I was telling you about various devices that people, that the villagers and the actors employ to show this spectacle. One is the Draupadi Vastra Apaharanam scene, when Draupadi is praying to Krishna to protect her honor, when Duryodhana has Kondu Varuvai, he sings, this is a very powerful song. And then Draupadi's song, Draupadi says she will not come to the, and just a curtain held by two people becomes the palace behind which she is standing. And she says, I don't know who you are, I don't know who your brother is. My husbands will, if they have lost me, I don't know whether munne totara, pinne totara. Did my husband lose me before he lost himself or after he lost himself? I don't care who you are. Ask him to come and call me, she says. And Duryodhana is angry, and he tells his younger brother Dushasana, thank you Harish, I had forgotten the name suddenly, goes running and brings her, pulling her hair. That hair contraption is also very interesting. The actor ties a big, a yarn is tied around the hair, and that becomes the one which is held by Draupadi tightly and Dushasana, and the way they, the choreography of the whole dragging around is a very strong performance. It can last for more than an hour. Even though they are saying sorry to Draupadi, even though they are praying to Draupadi to not be angry at them for this humiliation, it is a patriarchal performance that is reinforcing patriarchal ideas, even though they are praying to Draupadi, because it's the men who are performing. But when he is pulling the sari, the Purusai group did a very beautiful way of showing that. Let me show you a picture. This is an article I wrote in a magazine called Arts Illustrated. So there is Duryodhana and Dushasana, and they put a big curtain, and behind that is standing Draupadi, and they tie several saris together, and Dushasana keeps pulling them and then letting it go back, and somebody sitting at the back is pulling it back. So with 3 saris it becomes eternal sari. It keeps going back and forth, and they keep a young man right on top as Krishna, holding one end of this 3 saris. With just 3 saris, they create an endless sari that is coming back and forth. It's an amazing spectacle that Purusai group does. And so in this, it takes place for a very, very long time. And people, many of the women become, they get trance during this time. Some of the women I saw for myself, some women burnt camphor in their palm when this happened. It is that kind of emotion that the scene brings out in the people when they are sitting in the darkness in the village in front of Draupadi Amman temple, and the story further takes it to such a level that some women have trance and some women burn camphor in their own hands. And but at the same time, they also know this is entertainment at the same time. So there is constant teasing the actors, asking, you sang that day well, you did not say this dialogue, you didn't finish that song, and constantly whenever there is very good acting that is happening in the middle of the play, people are getting up and going, giving gifts to the artists. So people go and pin notes on the shirt of the artist, on the costume of they take a safety pin and go and pin on their, so they stop the play and they sing the praise of the person who has just given them the gift. It's called Shubhojayam. And then they continue the play. So it is a play that is in the collective memory of the people, and at the same time it is something that is of epic proportion, that is remembered in a remote little village of near Kanchipuram, so where the artists have walked several kilometers, taken bars, carried their costume on their head, and they have come to a small village and they have created magic of epic proportions. And the villagers are taking part in a storytelling that where they are participants. They are also they've also become characters in the story. So this is what Koothu is. There was a controversy about the naming of the play, this form, because Theru Koothu was considered demeaning. That's what some of the artists felt, that Theru Koothu was kind of considered demeaning by the city dwellers, who just said it is street theatre. It is not street theatre, so we must call it by some other name, because Koothu, the word Koothu is a generic term. It is a common word for 11 types of Koothu as described in the Shilapadikaram. Even now we have the Chakyar Koothu in Kerala. We have various kinds of Koothu in different parts of South India. This was called Theru Koothu for a long time because of this street performance that took place between Draupadi. But some of the scholars are saying it was not because of that street fight, but because when the procession of the icon happened, Koothu actors would be asked to come and lead the procession, performing a little bit in front of the procession, which is why it was called Theru Koothu. Only that is Theru Koothu, not what is performed as ritual and proscenium. Because a proscenium is where space has been sanctified by the the curtain held, and once the Melam has sung all the different talas and the music has becomes the proscenium. So it cannot be Theru Koothu. It has to be called something else. So Kattai Koothu was the name adapted by many of the artists, and a Kattai Koothu Artists Association was formed, Kattai Koothu Sangam was formed, and a training center was formed by Hannah De Bruyne and her husband, artist P. Rajagopal. They formed the Sangam, and then they got land to do a training school for the Koothu, which is now, of course, in need of support, in need of now artists are all suffering because of lack of performance, etc. I open it for questions if there are any now, because it's such a long history, and it's so much embedded in the agrarian practice of northern Tamil Nadu, that for an hour or so. It's much more. I would be happy if there are any questions. I can pick it up for answering. Okay, one of the practices for Koothu, even for building a Draupadi Amman temple in a village, is with the mud brought from Melacheri in Senji. Senji Kotai is near Tiruvannamalai, where Draupadi Amman temple is there. From there they bring mud to build Draupadi Amman temple. So Senji Melacheri is a very close to the Koothu artists. That's one idea. So it's a fascinating performing phenomena, which has epic social, political and personal under the same umbrella. It's fascinating. One can say it's a phenomena, because you constantly discover more and more of what this form is all about. And it's been there for a very long time. One even wonders why the Mamallapuram monuments have been named after the Pandavas. Why is it called Five Rathas, and why Mahabharata names are given? Was it because this Koothu was happening around there? Was Mahabharata being played around there at that time? Is that why all these monuments got that name? You know, a Koothu artist has to be physically very in form, because he has to sing the whole night. It is a performance of about 20 hours in a day. When you're doing ritual, when you're performing, when you're singing, when you're dancing, because the singing has to be very high pitch, because people are sitting all around in a night open space, and come out very well. So it is a very high. Yeah, Nattuvanar is a word that is more used by the Chinnamelam practitioners who come from Tanjavur area. That is from where Sadiratam, and so a Nattuvanar is somebody who conducts the performance. So he is the Nattuvanar. He is the Natyam performer. He is the conductor of the Natyam. So he is the Nattuvanar who's got the symbols, and he does here in Koothu tradition, the leader of the group is called either Annavi or Vadyar. He's the leader of the group. The leader of the Melam for Bharatanatyam or Sadar or Dasyatam is the Nattuvanar. So they are two different traditions. This is Koothu. This Koothu is Theru, which is a agrarian practice, whereas Bharatanatyam is a much more related to the temple and much more of the higher people. Well, that's a very long lecture. Shirapadikaram is Adhikaram is the ruling of the Silambam. Silambam itself is what the worn around the ankle. So it's the anklet that. So Shirapadikaram is now there is a controversy about whether it is 1st century or much earlier. I won't go into the dating of Shirapadikaram, but Dr. Nagaswamy, who is now working a lot on Shirapadikaram, says Shirapadikaram itself is a Koothu, he says, because there are lots of songs, and the way it is structured, the way lot of space is given for side stories in Shirapadikaram. It itself is a Koothu structure, according to Dr. Nagaswamy. The Shirapadikaram is the earliest of Tamil Koothus, as Dr. Nagaswamy says, where the story of Kannagi and Kovalan, who from a very rich merchant class, marries Kannagi, a beautiful girl from a very rich family, and they set up home, and then Kovalan sees Madhavi, who is a beautiful dancer, and his heart is taken by Madhavi, and he spends a lot of time with her. And then one day he realizes that he must go back to his wife Kannagi, and though Madhavi is pregnant, he leaves her and he goes back to Kannagi, who is a Pativrata, who is considered the, and they have no money now because he has spent all the money on Madhavi, and so she gives him, Kannagi gives him one of her anklets to go and sell in the market. And a jealous goldsmith who has actually stolen an anklet from the queen reports this as saying that anklet belongs to the queen, and without a trial, proper trial, and without checking, Kovalan is put to death by the king. And Kannagi, because of her Pativrata, is so angry and she's so furious. She comes and asks the king the question as to how a man could be put to death without any proper trial, and she burns Madurai down, with her curse. And then they both become heavenly people, and they ascend to the heaven. This is the story of Shilapadikaram in a very, very brief manner. I can only say that Dr. Nagaswamy feels that the structure of the story itself is a Koothu. It's a Koothu form. Pandavas. There is also a theory that the 5 Rathas are perhaps a school of architecture that is experimenting with the different kinds of architecture, because remember, these were the first stone structures, and they have copied the rafters, wooden rafters, and the thatch roofs, and the different kinds of roofs are experimented with in the stone. And the Dharmaratha, like the Ellora structure, begins from the top, and they have started working downwards. The only structure that is complete is what is called Draupadi Rasa or Durga, dedicated to Durga, which has a thatch roof copied in stone. And so it's this is what I say, because it's only a speculation that perhaps because Terukuthu was performed there, they must have named all these as Pandavarathas, Pancha Pandavarathas. Regional differences are constantly there, just like dialects in a language which changes from one corner of a city, a village, to the another corner. Dialects change. So Koothu styles differ from place to place, but mostly because it is concentrated in the North Orchard area, there is a constant similarity. At the same time, the style may differ from place to place. Tiruvannamalai, there is towards Bangalore in Dharmapuri and those areas, Krishnagiri and Dharmapuri, it's a little different from what is performed in Kanchipuram and what is performed in Tiruvannamalai and further down. So small differences are there, but they mostly, and then some of them perform Purana stories. Mostly it is Mahabharata. Some people have performed Ramayana also, but Purana stories are taken up by a lot of fringe performing groups also. Koothu, apart from mythology, a lot of people have used various kinds of stories to perform. Purusai group performed Kalidasa, Tenali Rama. They have performed in Colombia, they have performed Gabriel Garcia Marquez's The Old Man with Huge Wings. That story they have performed. It was a big surprise because they thought it was a commission as an exchange program to go and perform in Bharata Theatre Festival. But it was a big surprise for them that villagers began to ask them, because normally village assignments are invitations, tambulam as we is for temple festivals, mostly ritual purposes. When there is a funeral, Karnamoksham will be performed. So when there is a temple festival, they mostly like to invite Mahabharata stories. But this group was very surprised because they got single invitations for overnight performances in many small villages for this Gabriel Garcia Marquez's story of the old man with the huge wings, the Purusai group. Koothu group, Kanchipuram, has done many environmental stories and things like that. Well, when they are performing the war scene, they show it is mostly dialogue oriented and dance oriented. There is martial arts shown because Bhima and Duryodhana, they go into different kinds of fighting, They use swords and then arrows and then Malla Yuddham, physical with just the hands. All this. So, but is it specific form? We don't know. It's the artists who use. Where Vishnu, in the final, when he comes as Narasimha, wears the mask from the temple. Temple gives the mask. And the Koothu artists also have mask is worn by the Narasimha. Otherwise, masks are only hardly ever used. It's makeup, mostly makeup. Koothu costume is very important. As I told you, it's a common costume for the royal characters, and the prince wears the shikareki, the king wears the kattai vesham, and the women used to wear traditional way of sari and all that. Now they wear like we wear the sari, and many people in the villages give saris to the women characters. So they want them to wear nylon and flashy saris and things like that. Once there was a NGO that was working on AIDS. They asked me to help them connect to a Koothu group which would spread information on AIDS. So they wanted to do a workshop. So I called this group and connected the two, and they said, you have to spread this message in your play. And so I said, when Kichaka is chasing Draupadi, you can bring this dialogue in. The Koothu actors were very angry. They said, no, how can we even imagine Draupadi Amman will be, Kichaka will even go near her. And then in the evening, they had created a new character. They had brought a woman who was not Draupadi, some other woman meeting Draupadi, and she gives all these messages about AIDS and all that. So it's quick thinking immediately. I would like to thank Coconut Theatre for such wonderful session under the banner of Chai-Wai and Rangmanch. I am very happy to have spoken. I would have spoken in Hindi, but I am not very confident about it. I know a little bit about it, and मेरी हिंदी आपको बहुत दिक्कत लगाया होगा, इसीलिए मैं हिंदी में बात नहीं किया, because English I am more familiar, easier in English to speak. I listened to a lot of lectures from the earlier times, and I'm very happy that such ideas are being discussed here about theatre forms all over. And this total theatre of the Tamils is a phenomena. It's unbelievable, elaborate, many layered cultural practice, I can say, instead of just theatre form or a performance. It's not just a performance. It's not just a street theatre. It's not just ritual. It's not just proscenium's performance. It's a cultural event, festival, we can say. It's not exhaustive at all. I've just introduced you. I've just begun to talk about Koothu. There's so much more behind. So thank you very much.